Hi, hello. It is Josh Bow for Pod Maverick. This is Pod Maverick After Dark. Joining you tonight after the Mavericks get beat 117-102 to the Detroit Pistons in Detroit. As you can tell if you were watching live on YouTube, it is just me tonight. Kirk put in some PTO, uh, honestly, like over a week ago. He fought his best the other night, saying that he could still come home and pod uh, after, even though he wouldn't have watched a minute of this game. And I'm like, no, go have fun. Kirk made the best decision because this was not a good game. Although it would have been really funny to see how mad he would have gotten watching this game. Again, Mavericks lose by 15 to the Pistons. Not a great game, and overall kind of a disappointing effort. My overall thought is this is not a game. I don't think there's shame in losing to this Pistons team. I know the Pistons have been a pretty terrible franchise for going on almost a decade now. And you look at their record and they're 24-24, which doesn't seem that impressive. But considering where they've been the last like 5 to 6 years, it's almost like a monumental achievement. And so they're a feisty team. They've got some good young players. They've got some veteran role players. So it's not bad to lose to this team. What I think is kind of bad is the way they lost. The Pistons did not. This wasn't a tip your hat to them. Pistons just got lucky shooting the ball. I mean, the Mavericks got it to 93-91 at the start of the fourth quarter. And when you're down by two with 10 minutes left in the game, and you end up having to pull all your starters with 3 minutes left, or your main players because it's a 20-point deficit, that's disappointing. I think it's fair to be frustrated with that. It's fair to be mad about that as a fan. It's not like the Mavericks fought them to the very end. They pretty much bowed out pretty meekly from the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And while the Pistons are a decent team, the Mavericks are coming off, two straight wins. They beat Oklahoma City twice in the last, 2 or so weeks. They blew the doors off the Wizards, which is nothing special, but their offense had been in quite a groove. They were back-to-back games with 20 or more made three-pointers, and the offense just died on a vine. And again, like I said, this wasn't like a tip your cap. The Pistons just had a good shooting night. Detroit shot 44% from the floor. They shot 25% from three. They were 9 of 35 from three. To win a game by 15 points when you shoot 25% from three, that's not luck. That's like the opposite of luck. That's not fluky at all. The Pistons had 62 points in the paint. They didn't shoot the ball well in the restricted area because Daniel Gafford was a menace, and we'll get to that later. They shot 58.5% in the restricted area, which is well below league average 66. So the Mavericks actually contested well. Problem was Detroit shot 41 times in the restricted area, 41 attempts. That's massive. They had 24 makes in the restricted area, which is a lot of makes. So despite the fact that Daniel Gafford gave the Pistons hell when they got to the rim, they got to the rim too much. And when you give a team that many opportunities at the basket, it doesn't matter how well you defend it. You're going to lose. You're going to lose the game. Pistons did shoot 7 of 12 in the mid-range, which I guess you could say is kind of fluky, but Cade Cunningham is a good mid-range shooter. So what are you going to do? That was a story of the game for me, for the Mavericks. It was kind of a tale of both ends of the floor were bad. On defense, the guards were obliterated both on line drive attacks and in the pick and roll. I felt like every time a Mavericks guard got screened, they were completely wiped out on the play. And you had Daniel Gafford or whichever big guarding the screen kind of out on an island, guarding 1-on-2s. And Jalen Duren, the Pistons big starting big, had a couple alley-oops because the Mavericks big was in that no man's land of what are you going to do when your guard gets so decimated by the screen at the point of attack and they're out of the play. Your big is having to guard basically two people at one time. And the Mavericks weak side defenders, I don't think crashed down well enough to help in the pick and roll, which was especially disappointing because the Pistons did not shoot the ball well. So if this was a night to cheat off of shooters, this was the night. That's for sure, and that didn't happen at all. And then on the other end of the floor, the Mavericks off, and then another point defensively before I get to the offense. Again, just going over the general thoughts here is the The Mavericks did not turn the Pistons over at all. Pistons had 7 total team turnovers. The Mavericks had 4 steals, and they didn't make the Pistons uncomfortable at all. Detroit got to every spot they wanted to on the floor, even if they missed a shot, they got into where they wanted to go on the floor. And then conversely, on the other side of the ball, the Mavericks couldn't keep turning it over, which has been not a shock without Luka Doncic since Luka's been out, and even a little bit before he came out. The Mavericks have been uncharacteristically bad at giving the ball away to the other team. They are. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they're bottom third of the league. I'm pretty sure in turnovers right now. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong later. And that's a bad combination when you turn the ball over a lot on offense, and then you can't turn the other team over on defense. That you're playing at a possession deficit that is very hard to overcome. It's almost like the 3-point math, like the possession math, like. It doesn't matter the fact that Detroit didn't shoot the ball well. They just had more possessions. Detroit had 106 shot attempts. Mavericks had 87, and the teams were pretty even. And the Mavericks had more free throw attempts, but not that much more. Free throw attempts, Mavericks 21, Detroit 16. So that doesn't encompass, that doesn't make up for that shot attempt discrepancy. Detroit just had more opportunities. That's what happens when you turn the ball over 17 times and the other team turns it over 7. So yeah, that's kind of the general vibe of this game, and kind of really the vibe since Luka's been out, and especially with DeAndre Jordan and Luka out. And the Mavericks were able to get by it because they've been shooting the ball especially well the last few games, especially the last 2 games. They've been kind of able to hide that problem. So that's kind of the overall diagnosis. Offense giving the ball away too much, defense not turning it over enough, the other team enough, defense not keeping guards out of the paint. Defense not dictating the terms, and then offensively, this was like rolling the Greek myth, rolling the boulder up the hill. Like every possession the Mavericks had tonight, from pretty much from the second quarter to the end of the game, felt like a struggle and a slog. And even when it was a successful possession, the Mavericks felt like they were working 10 times harder for their buckets than the Pistons were. Like it felt like the Pistons were running a scrimmage when they were on offense, and the Mavericks were like grinding in a game in a high stakes game 7. Like that was the discrepancy in the offensive flow between the two teams. A weirdly bad game for Kyrie Irving. He had a team high 28 points, got to the free throw line 7 times, but was 9 of 23 from the floor, 3 of 10 on threes, 3 turnovers, 3 assists. Kind of. There wasn't a game plan offensively, it felt like. And I know Mavericks fans, and I'm sure people in the chat want to throw Jason Kidd in the gulag for the way that this game played out. And, I can't really blame him after a game like tonight, where the game plan just felt like give Kyrie the ball and then let's see what happens. Like the off ball stuff, there wasn't a lot. And then it felt like once Kyrie kind of realized, hey, we've got nothing cooking, he kind of took the game into his own hands, which I don't blame him. He was in a tough situation with the way the team was playing offense tonight. And he took a lot of shots. Daniel Gavin had a good game offensively. PJ Washington had a good game offensively, and that was about it. Dinwiddie was bad. Thompson was invisible after the first quarter. The bench gave them nothing. Quentin Grimes played 10 minutes, which was very weird. Talking with DLLS's Tim Cato on Twitter right after this game ended, Grimes feels like he has, Cato made this point, and we were talking about Grimes's minutes. He feels like he has the shortest leash of anyone in the rotation. Because let's be clear, in his 10 minutes, he was not good. He missed his only shot, 0 points, no assists, no rebounds, no steals, and 2 turnovers. He was not good, but I don't know if the Mavericks are in a position right now, especially, if this was Omax Prosper or Jaden Hardy or another younger player, I would maybe understand it more. But I don't really understand doing it with a veteran who has proven himself time and time again this season that he's crucial to your formula for winning games. I don't know how you don't go back to him more in the second half just to try it. My theory is, Dante Exum returned his first game of the season after suffering a wrist injury that made him have surgery on his right wrist at the start of training camp. he looked okay. He had a good first half, bad second half, and I wonder if Kid with how bad Grimes was playing and having that Exum option, maybe he felt like, all right, I'll just go to Exum because I don't think Grimes has it tonight. And predictably, Exum was very rusty the second half. Had that really awful turnover in the fourth quarter that it kind of swung, it didn't make the Mavericks lose, but it really swung the momentum back in the Pistons' favor, and they were kind of off to the races from there. What's curious is that Grimes' minutes is coming at the expense of Exum's. Spencer Dinwiddie played 23 minutes. If anything, you would think Exum's minutes would come at the expense of Dinwiddie's, just due to their role. Like Grimes and Exum are different. They're both guards, but they're different. Exum is a point guard, table setter on offense. Grimes is more of a scorer, shooter, defensive guy, mind-oriented guy. Obviously, Exum is defensively oriented as well. But yeah, it was weird that Exum ate into seemingly Grimes's minutes and not Dinwiddie's. So I would look at that, see if they're going to tweak that. But I think Kid likes Dinwiddie. Like, I think that's just the thing. Like he trusts Dinwiddie, and Dinwiddie has shot the ball well lately. Entering this game, he was on a pretty decent run. So him having a poor game, he's allowed to have a bad game, but he was also part of, defensively, Dinwiddie, Thompson, and Kyrie were just, that was some really bad guard defense. So that didn't help as well. Yeah, I don't know. Not a great game all around. Again, Daniel Gafford, another double-double, was one of the lone bright spots. PJ Washington, another bright spot. Again, I don't know what the game plan was offensively. And then defensively, offensively, we talked about it. Thompson scores a bunch of points early in the first quarter, and he seemingly doesn't touch the ball again. I've been a little defensive over their usage of Thompson because I feel like they've been trying to get Thompson going. And it's been hard because their spacing has been so compromised. And they've played such good defenders that it's been hard to free Thompson up on these off-ball stuffs. But tonight they didn't make a big effort to get him involved, I don't think. The Pistons have some good defenders on the perimeter, but I thought the Mavericks left some meat on the bone for sure. And then the other, other than the floor, I just don't know what the game plan was. Because offensively, like I said, they seemingly collapsed into isolation, one pass ball for most of after the first quarter. And then defensively, it was like they were just escorting Detroit to the paint. That broke down the defense in a variety of ways. It let the Pistons score 62 points in the paint. Sorry, I'm yawning. I've had a rough few nights. So I'm really tired. And no co-host means I can't take a breather. But defensively, it was like they were escorting the Pistons to the rim at will. And then when you do that, you compromise your rebounding, and Detroit had 18 offensive rebounds. So it was like dribble penetration. That's what happens because Gafford is in those 2-on-1s and he's contesting, and there's no one on the back end to get a board. So the Pistons had, look at this. The Pistons had 27 second chance points, and they also scored 27 points off of turnovers. You are not going to win a basketball game if you give up a combined almost 60 points off turnovers and offensive rebounds, second chance points. Those are horrible numbers. You're just not going to win. I think that goes to show the kind of lackadaisicalness on offense and then some of the effort on the defensive end. I just don't think this was a great effort. Again, if the Mavericks went down swinging to the end of the fourth quarter, I would get it, but they really died on a vine in that fourth quarter. And that was really disappointing to see. They only scored 17 points in the fourth quarter. They used to have it. Man, what else? I feel like, I know I've only talked for 15 minutes, but I don't know what else there is to say. Offensively for Detroit, obviously Cade Cunningham. We haven't mentioned him. I wrote the preview for Mavs Moneyball. I want to pull it up because I had a subhead for this and I thought it was funny. I think it was like the second thing I wrote. Yeah, can they slow down Cade was the subhead I wrote. Very clearly they can't. That was the thing going into this game because Cade is like not a poor man's version of Luka feels disrespectful because Cade's really good, but also Luka's really good. So saying that's not that disrespectful. But Cade is like the closest to a Luka player that isn't Luka in terms of his combination of size and skill. He is a big 6'6" guard with great vision and the ability to play at any kind of pace that he wants. We talk about Luka's acceleration and deceleration as some of the best traits that he has. Cade is like one of the only other guys that I feel like can do that, and especially with his size, he's really tough to guard. He can score from all three areas of the floor: rim, mid range, and threes. He did that tonight, although he didn't really make a ton of threes. He was 3 of 8. He was fantastic. And again, the Mavericks had no answer. And you look at the starting lineup: Clay, Dinwiddie, and Irving. Those are mismatch. All three of those guys, that's a mismatch for Cade. So you've got to put PJ on him. And PJ, you can't really put PJ on Cade because you look at the Pistons and they've got Tobias Harris, Sir Thompson, Tim Hardaway Jr. You know, you put PJ on Cade, who's guarding Tobias Harris? Is Clay guarding Tobias Harris? Is Kyrie? Is Dinwiddie? No. I mean, the best thing they could have done. Yeah, because you can try to hide like a Kyrie or a Clay or Dinwiddie on a Sir Thompson, who's not an offensive threat. He only had 2 points in 23 minutes. But again, you do that and you put PJ on Cade, then that still leaves two of the Kyrie, Dinwiddie, Thompson that you're not putting on a Sir. One of them has to guard Tobias Harris. Lo and behold, Tobias Harris had 17 points on 12 shots and was pretty good. So they were the matchup was not great. This was a game. I mean, this was a huge game in terms of missing Luka and Derek Lively, because with no Lively, it felt like their defense was just compromised because Gafford is just not as good as guarding those no man land situations. To be fair, no big needs to be put in those situations because that's not fair to the big, but Lively is so talented and good. Not to say Gafford isn't good, but Lively's just kind of on another level where he can sometimes succeed in those situations. So I felt like their defense was really compromised in this game without Lively. And then offensively, like they missed Luka with the turnovers and no offensive rhythm. They also missed Luka's size on on defense and rebounding. Like you would have loved to have Luka, muck it up in the paint with Tobias Harris and Thompson. The Mavs felt really small against this Pistons team, and that hurts. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Like again, that's why I would not have. I don't ding the Mavericks for I don't ding the Mavericks for losing this game because the Pistons are a respectable team, and with the Mavericks compromised the way they are with injuries, it's not a great matchup. But the way that they just kind of got their doors blown off in the second half was not great. That's disappointing. You're allowed to be disappointed as a fan. When a team cuts, you start the fourth quarter down 8. Mavericks were down 8 to start the fourth, and you get it to 2 with 10 minutes left, and then you're down. I mean, you're down 115-96. So what? You're down 19 points or whatever that is, in about an 8-minute stretch, and the game's over. Like that's a give up. That sucks. Like I don't blame fans for being pissed off about this game, especially when you look at the schedule. So before we wrap it up, let's look at the schedule. Not great. Mavericks still have to stay on the road. They got to stay on the road for 3 more games, all 3 Eastern Conference. Here are the next 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are the next 5 games: at Cleveland, at Philly, at Boston, home Houston, home Sacramento. So, I mean, those are 4 of the 5 are playoff teams. 3 of the 5 are top 2 seeds in either conference, Cleveland and Boston, and then and then Houston in the West. Then Sacramento is, not incredible right now, but they're still a competent team that's in the playoff hunt. You play an early game Sunday against Cleveland. It's tough. This is going to be a really tough stretch, which is why it's all the more critical the Mavericks picked up those wins against Oklahoma City, got those wins against Washington, New Orleans, because they've built themselves a little buffer where if they can win against Philly, which Philly is not in a good place right now with their injuries, you can lose to Cleveland, Boston, Houston, win against Philly, and still be a game up on 500 with some home games going into the All-Star break. So there is a path for them to survive and be above 500 if that matters for y'all before the All-Star break starts. I'm sure it matters to the team. And then presumably, if Luka comes back, he'll probably come back on that homestand that starts Saturday, February 8th against Houston. So there is a chance for some good vibes before the All-Star break. You know, if they could get to the All-Star break at 500 or above, I think that's a massive win. Luka will be back, and then you try to rip off another second half run and see where it goes from there. But yeah, this game stunk. I think it's crazy that they lost the game by 15 points when their opponent shot 25% from three. That just kind of goes to show how unfluky this game was to me. I mean, the Pistons let's be real, the Pistons kind of beat the shit out of the Mavericks tonight. Like, we got to be honest, right? Like, that's kind of what happened. If the Pistons, if they shot what 30% from three instead of 25, like, not even a high number. Like, if they shot 35% from three, which is like league average, they win this game by like 25 points. So, like, or 30 points maybe. Like, the Mavericks are lucky that they were in this game that to begin with the way they were giving up the paint, and then the fact that the Pistons could make them pay when they did get open threes, because they did get open threes. The Pistons missed some threes. I'll say that the one thing the Mavericks did probably too little, too late. The last thing I'll say, around it out. We're going 22 minutes, and I don't want to have to keep talking anymore. Mavericks went to a zone. That's what got them back in the game in the fourth, and then they kind of abandoned it. It was the one thing that stopped the Pistons parading to the three-point line. It kind of enticed them to take some more jumpers, which was a win for the Mavericks because the Pistons were making jumpers and they were doing everything in the paint. I don't know why they stopped. I don't think Detroit really figured it out. But I don't know if an NBA team can play zone defense for an entire fourth quarter. So I'm not going to kill the coaching staff for that. Maybe they should have went to it. If there's anything to kill, maybe they should have gone to it earlier, before you get down by 15 in the third. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe the Mavericks have to play some more zone against Cleveland and Boston, because they are not going to be able to keep those teams out of the paint if they can't keep Detroit out of the paint. So we'll see. Everyone take your Saturday, rest up, recuperate, recover, and then we're back Sunday afternoon, marquee game against Cleveland. I have no idea how a 2:30 Sunday game against the best team in the league record wise is not a national TV game, not even NBA TV. Like, how does that work? Very weird. But it might be for the best, because the Mavericks might get their bell rung Sunday afternoon. So we will see you guys Sunday afternoon. Thank you for sticking with me through what is presumably like a very low energy solo podcast. I did my best. My daughter had a fever last night, woke up at 4 a.m. So I am tired, but praise heaven, 6 o'clock start time means that we are done, and it is 9 o'clock local time, and I am done. I'm going to bed. I will edit up our post-game stuff on mavsmoneyball.com. Please go check that out. If you're listening to the podcast live, if you want to still read more about this really crappy game, we'll have post-game stuff up very shortly after done recording here. If you're listening on the audio-only version, please subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, also subscribe as well. Kirk should be back Sunday afternoon, unless we all have the plague, and who knows. We'll go from there. So for Pod Maverick, this is Josh Bowe signing off. You guys stay safe. We'll talk to you Sunday after the game against Cleveland.